The S4 really has come quite a long way since we first bought it. Way back then, the car was broken to the point where I couldn't even drive it home. Pretty much every single part of the car needed love in some capacity, and ever since we started this build, that's exactly what we've been giving it. We've improved pretty much everything on this car, all in preparation for going big turbo. We've changed a lot on the exterior and engine of this car, but in my opinion, one of the places where this car's improved the most is on the inside. When I bought the car, the interior was completely torn to shreds. Every door card had a notable issue, and both the front seats had no bolsters and were cracked beyond repair. But now, the interior is a great place to be. Yet, I feel like I'm forgetting something. Maybe it's just the fact it's almost winter. Or maybe I'm just distracted, picking bigger brakes and bigger turbos for the car. I don't know what it is. All I can say is, I feel like I'm missing something. An issue that's been plaguing this car for as long as I've owned it that has gone under the radar. Something that just hasn't been the highest importance. But then again, maybe I'm going crazy. Maybe I'm just internally struggling with the fact that everything this car really needs has mostly been taken care of. Either way, I'm sure if there does happen to be some tiny little issue that I've been forgetting about this whole time, it'll make itself apparent in some way or another. I mean, with this car, that always happens. This cold week started like just about any other, showing up trying to make some semblance of progress. Only in the case of this week, at least at this point, that progress had nothing to do with the S4. It was a TT week. I'd recently replaced part of my charge pipe and I needed to get logs sent over to the tuner to see if we made anything better. That way we could work on upgrades. In other words, at this point, really the only thing that was crossing my mind was how best to get the TT warmed up and prepped for the logs. I knew that I was happy to work on the TT. What I didn't know was that I unintentionally just stepped into yet another rabbit hole. At this point, I was really only curious to see what the day would bring, and in my mind, all that was really planned was getting the TT's logs done. I pretty quickly realized that if I was going to tune the car today, I'd need my other bag too, but it was still in the S4. Up until now, I thought I'd be thinking about the TT this weekend, but that changed the second I saw the mess that was on my bag. The rear seats of the S4 are fundamentally destroyed, and up until this point, I'd completely forgotten. They were like this when I bought the car, but that was a very different time. Back then, the whole interior of this car looked like this, so it wasn't a big deal, and I could just forget about it. Now, however, since the interior is so nice and put together everywhere but this, I don't think I can forget about it as easily. From the very second this issue reintroduced itself into my brain, it's been stuck there. And no matter how hard I tried that day, fixing this was the only thing I could think about.
And I guess my first question is, can I even fix this? Is this a fixable issue, or should I just look at replacements?
And therein lies issue number one. Fixing these seats is likely not going to be feasible. The only reason we were able to fix the torn seats in the E30 was because those kits were available. I can't find any for the rear seats of the S4, so replacing them is kind of the only option I'm thinking of. And that brings me to the second issue. This car had a ton of different interior colors, and the one we have isn't the most common. Furthermore, it's also not like we have a ton of options when finding rear used seats for the car. So issue number two is the fact that there's only going to be a couple colors available, a couple options to choose from, a handful at most. And to make matters worse, the colorway that's in my S4 isn't for sale anywhere. So no matter what we do, whatever we get will be different. Now that doesn't mean it's going to look bad. It just means we're going to be taking a risk. We won't know if we like them or not for sure until they show up and we put them in.
And while I was waiting for the seats to show up, since we did a bit of end-of-year cleaning on both of the other cars, I figured we should give the same treatment to the S4.
So that's exactly what I did. I came back a couple days later after the TT was sorted and the snow had fallen. And just like I did with the other cars, I tried to do my best to give this car a bit of a winter clean. Granted, this car really wasn't nearly as messy as the other two. And the whole time I couldn't stop thinking about the philosophy of how clean is too clean. I feel like there's this ideology propagated online that your build has to be the cleanest it can ever be. Everything has to be factory brand new and perfect. And maybe I'm just once again struggling to interpret perfection. But in my mind, one of the coolest parts about building a project car is actually driving it. So if you spend so much time making it perfect to the point where you don't want to drive it for fear of ruining it or making it dirty, you're almost robbing the project of its purpose. But if your purpose for the build is just looks, all bets are off. I guess it's really just a matter of perspective. Much to my surprise, given how many things are ordered this time of the year, the rear seats arrived ahead of schedule. Just a couple days later and they were on the porch. Even though my options for buying rear seats for this car used were quite limited, I did have a couple choices to make. After all, since this interior came in a number of different colors, there's different options that were available to me. Not really that many, but there were at least a couple colors I could choose from. The most expensive by far was an all-blue interior, which included the front seats too, and that really wouldn't look too good with the white door cards, so I didn't really consider it. The second most expensive I could find, believe it or not, was all black, and I'm sure that would look absolutely fine, but that makes sense since it's all black. It would look fine going into any car. I kind of wanted to get something a little bit cooler, and that is exactly where this color came in, which happened to be cheaper than the black as well. I mostly picked this option because it's both unique and should match our door cards quite well. This is a white Alcantara set of rear seats, and while it is used, it's also in fantastic condition. Much better condition than my seats, which happen to be melting. The white should match the door cards really well, and I'm extra excited because I've always had a soft spot for this colorway specifically. The first step in installing the new seats is removing the old ones. And if you thought removing the rear seats on the TT was simple, this is even easier. And just like most cars, removing the rear bench is the easy first step. It's held on with 2 clips, and once it's popped up, you can just slide it out the side. Once it's out, you're greeted by the grossest and most unsurprising surprise of all times. Most people don't clean under their rear seats, so usually when you pull the bench, it's filthy. Since we're pulling the rest of the seats out though, before we clean it, I figure it's best to get everything that's staying out of the car out first. And the first thing I did was remove the headrests, though I found out later you don't actually have to do this to remove the back of the seats. One of my favorite underrated parts of working on a car is learning something new about it that you have not known the entire time of owning it. And today was one of those cases in a really funny way. Up until now, I had no idea these seats folded down. I guess I just assumed that that would only be an Avant thing. But I think it's really funny in hindsight how fascinated I was by this.
Wow. That's insane. That is insane.
And once I was done fawning over the seat engineering, I turned my sights over to the bolsters on the side. While these aren't technically part of the seats themselves, they are ruined in the same way the seats are, so I'm replacing these as well. They're held on with a hook on the top and the bottom. Pulling the top back allows you to slide the whole thing down and pop it off of the hooks. And next is the coolest part of the entire way these seats are designed. With both seats folded down, you can see one bracket that holds in both seats. This Torx bolt is the only thing keeping these seats in place, so once it's removed, the rest we can pop out by hand. The seats sit in this little metal bracket below this, which is what allows them to fold down in the first place. And the other side isn't anything crazy either. No hardware. It's a metal skewer sticking out from a hole in the wall and into the seat itself. So if you pull the center section up, you can slide the seat to the opposite direction and the whole seat will come out. In other words, it is shockingly simple to remove these. And now that all the interior is out of the car, it's a great time to look at all the damage that's actually here. That passenger seat back was the only undamaged section. Everything else is completely ruined. The previous owner claimed that boxes were stored on this and that's where all this damage came from, but to me it almost looks like water or some sort of a chemical damage. Either way, we're not going to have to worry about it anymore. And since the interior is out, we are all set to clean it before installing the new seats. And my goal here was not to get it factory perfect, it was more so just to remove all the grime, insects, and Cheerios. I picked up the big pieces by hand and then moved on to a shop vac, and once all the dirt was up, I took inspiration from washing the dishes and used some Dawn Power Wash to clean the rest. And honestly, I'm definitely going to use this again for cleaning cars. It worked really well. This is it. Last call. The last chance I have to bail and reinstall the old interior. After all, I don't know for sure if this new white one's gonna look any better. The best thing I have going for me is that they seem to be the same shade of white, even though they're different materials. In other words, these new seats should match the door cards quite well. So, who am I kidding? They're gonna look way better. And thankfully, installing the new seats is even easier than getting the old ones out. I stuck the protruding spike into the hole in the seat and then pushed the other end of the seat into the bracket it goes into, and that's really the whole process for installing one of these. Plus, the rest of the seats in the package were in as good of condition, if not better. I think this is gonna look absolutely stellar. And up until now, things have been absolutely smooth sailing, but karma will always catch up to you. And in my case, it was getting close. The final piece of this puzzle is the rear bench. And if you've never seen this colorway before, it also has white Alcantara center sections that match the backs of the seats. Plus, the bench goes on just as easily as it comes off. All I did was set it in place, line it up, and give it a little bit of persuasion to set the clips. With the bench in place, the rear seats were officially swapped. In fact, I think the rear seats were the last part of this car's original interior. We swapped both front seats, 2 of the 4 door cards, new head unit, redid the trim pieces, and now the rear seats. This car's almost a modern-day equivalent to the ship of Theseus. Is it really the same car we started with? That's a whole other paradox to debate. At the end of the day, the real question is this. We know these new seats are in better condition, but does it look any better? And to that, I would say, without a doubt, yes. Ever since I first learned that the B5S4 came with these different colored interiors, I've always wanted one. And now that I've swapped the rear of this car to a much more special interior, I absolutely love it. I'm normally a pretty big fan of all black interiors, but I think the S4 is a special case. The white and black works really well. In fact, I would go so far as to say that having the interior be a multicolored colorway adds to the charm and personality this car has. Plus, it doesn't ruin my bag anymore. In other words, I am very glad we did this. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider dropping a like and subscribing for more. That's the best way you can help support me and my content. Either way, I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you again. Have a wonderful day.